I'm Scott Lucas. This is today's EA Worldview on the Middle East and Iran. President Obama's 5 worst decisions in 2013. It's been a busy year for the Obama administration over the Middle East, North Africa, and Iran. There have been some successes. In November, after more than a decade of attempts, the U.S. finally reached agreement with Tehran on an interim nuclear deal to resolve that long-standing issue. And then there was the success of, actually that may be about it. Here are the top 5 worst do-nothing decisions that made this a very bad year for the United States, the Middle East, and North Africa. There are honorable mentions for Libya, where the United States did nothing as the Prime Minister was kidnapped, as 90% of the oil production went offline because of strikes and violence, and there was the failure to establish a national security force. And also an honorable mention in Bahrain, where the United States did nothing while the regime continued to hold hundreds of political prisoners, including very high-profile human rights activists, failed to deliver any type of political reform and justice, and pretty much got away with it. But number 5, Iraq. This has been the deadliest year in Iraq since 2008, with close to 1,000 people killed in bombings, shootings, and other attacks. The al-Maliki government has been almost powerless to stop the wave of violence across the country. But then again, no one's going to chuck the al-Maliki government out of power. So we're caught in a perpetual cycle, whereas almost every week we can report on the latest atrocity, whereas we know that Baghdad will remain in power and that it will not face any type of pressure in the end to do something about that violence. There's a strange cycle here. As long as the extremists are there, al-Maliki will tell Washington, you've got to keep me in power. And as long as Washington fears extremists, it's not going to do anything to really look for any change in the Iraqi situation. So, more than a decade after the United States entered Iraq to supposedly liberate it, the do-nothing position, following George Bush's disastrous policies, has left us in a complete mess. 4, Egypt. Oh, it's been a strange year. First, you had the Morsi government at the start of the year facing mass protest. Then in July, the military came in and got rid of Morsi and said, we'll take charge of everything. A lot of people were upset about that. So on a single day in August, Egyptian security forces killed almost 700 people. It's continued to kill and detain and harass more. And all through it, the United States has said, maybe we'll cut off aid. Maybe we'll express our concern. Maybe we'll have a meeting with the head of the Egyptian Armed Forces, who is the real power in the country, and the token president and prime minister. And at the end of the day, let's be honest, the United States isn't going to do anything to move that coup-backed government out of power. Because quite frankly, it prefers this supposed security, no matter how many people are arrested or killed, to a supposed insecurity. That's bad enough, but even this has been half-hearted. Because while the United States has fiddled and flapped about how to respond to the post-coup government, it's been the Saudis and the Kuwaitis and other Gulf states that have put in billions of dollars of aid and earned the brownie points with Cairo. Number 3, Israel and Palestine. Now this summer on the surface, Washington said it was going to do something. It brought together an Israeli delegation and a Palestinian delegation and it said, you folks have talks, have some more talks, and maybe we'll get somewhere on the political, economic, and security issues, and here we are in December and we've gotten exactly nowhere. Fact of the matter is back in this spring, when the Obama administration did nothing about the Israeli government's decision to expand settlements in the West Bank and East Jerusalem, it showed that it could be pushed around. And even as the talks resumed this summer, this autumn, the Israeli government under Prime Minister Netanyahu announced, guess what? That it would create more settlements. If you're looking for a breakthrough on Israel-Palestine in 2014, forget it right now. Number 2, Saudi Arabia. The United States, through a process of actions, has proceeded to piss off even its allies. By the autumn, there was a serious split between Riyadh and Washington. Why? It wasn't because of Iran's nuclear program, which the Saudis were supposedly very worried about. It was about something that concerned them even more, which is Syria. In June, the United States said, after months of doing nothing, flapping around, trying to figure out where it would go, that it would give arms to the insurgency. Between June and August 21st, when there were chemical weapons attacks near Damascus, the U.S. supplied exactly 0 weapons. 0. Nothing. No support. Indeed, the American military basically pulled back on the commitment to give even non-lethal aid to the insurgents. So Saudi Arabia, which had taken the lead in saying that Assad should be pushed from power, got more and more frustrated. Which leads us to number 1, Syria. It's not just a question of doing nothing or pulling back between June and August 21st. It's what Washington did after that. On that day, in August, at least 900 Syrians died at the hands of their own government. The real figure is probably much higher than that. By August the 30th, John Kerry, Secretary of State, went before the cameras and said, "We cannot allow this to stand. There will be a response to punish President Assad for what he had done." 24 hours later, President Barack Obama said that there wouldn't be punishment. He was going to refer the matter to Congress. And a week later, the United States pulled back almost entirely by saying it would work with the Russians to try to destroy chemical weapons stocks. By December, after many hundreds more Syrians died in supposedly, quote, conventional attacks, the United States is on the verge of accepting that President Assad will remain in power for the foreseeable future. Do nothing has translated into accepting the crimes of a man who in August was compared by John Kerry to Hitler. All in all, not a very promising 2013. And if the Obama administration continues to do nothing, 2014 may have a list that's even longer than the top 5 worst decisions of the year. I'm Scott Lucas, and this is today's EA Worldview on Iran and the Middle East.